Welcome back to a new episode of Bon Voyage Besties with your hosts, Rosa and Rachel. And today we're going to dive into a topic that can cause a little bit of drama, especially when you're traveling with friends. And that's splitting the bill and how to manage the finances. Because let's be honest, planning a getaway with your friends sounds like the dream until one of you decides to drop $300 on a private kayak tour while someone is complaining the whole trip over a $9 smoothie that nobody paid them back for. Ask me how I know. So, we're going to dive right in and talk about how to make this a little bit less awkward and hopefully give you some tips to plan almost a nearly perfect girls trip. So, let's dive right in, Rachel.
So awkward, I gotta tell you. And I'm just laughing about the $9 smoothie because that sounds like a story in and of itself. Like, I always say, we're all adults here. Let's act like it.
Exactly. And I get it. I have friends that we both have like corporate jobs. So we're around the same ballpark, have like the similar lifestyle and things like that. But then I also have friends that make like double the amount of money that I make. So obviously their lifestyle is a little bit more, not necessarily high maintenance, but they do have more of that disposable income to spend. So they could be a little bit more lavish or stay like in pricier hotels. Whereas I can also make a little bit more money than some of my other friends. So we're all in different budgets. And just because you have more money doesn't necessarily mean you have more money to spend. You can also have more responsibilities, or maybe, spending money on a five-star hotel is just not your thing. So I think it could be a little bit awkward, even as you're traveling with friends. And sometimes, especially when traveling with friends, I feel like it could be a little bit more awkward because you not necessarily feel too comfortable to talk about it. But money is always like a controversial topic, but it shouldn't be, especially with traveling with friends. And I think the biggest thing, at least when it comes to managing your finances, we're going on a friends trip, is talking about these things beforehand, especially when you're in the planning process, because that's going to alleviate some of like the hiccups that you can face along the way.
I think talking about it during the planning process goes a long way because you can address any money mishaps then. And like, yeah, I get it. Like me, I actually have no shame. Like I joke about money constantly and what I spend my money on, but I know it's not the same for everybody. However, having the conversation beforehand is going to be a lot less awkward than having those uncomfortable conversations later when you're at this hotel that you actually have no budget for. So it's always a good thing to have those conversations first because I know when we planned our friend's trip to Crete, my one friend and I, we went on booking.com and we looked up hotels together and we discussed if the price point was okay. And then my one friend who was at work, I had already asked her ahead of time, what's a good budget for you per night? So I had that number to work with as a ballpark number. But I'm pretty fortunate where like all my friends and I were all pretty close and we have no problems talking about this ahead of time, where I know depending on the person, it could be a little more complicated than that.
We kind of touched about this a little bit on our high maintenance episode when traveling with different friends. Some people have certain expectations where you have that one friend who would rather walk in a rainstorm than pay $5 for like a taxi ride to commute somewhere. So, again, having these conversations ahead of time, talking about, hey, what's the budget for activities, for hotels? And one of the biggest things, too, that sometimes you don't think about, but also like for food, like how much are you willing to spend like on a restaurant? Do you want to go to this lavish place where you're paying a little bit more because of the location or, what you're eating? So having these conversations ahead of time and setting a realistic budget. But I know for me, and we touched this on the last episode with the high maintenance friend, like I do set a budget and I like to stay within a budget, but I'm not very strict with my budget, which is a little bit contradicting, right? Like you want to set a budget because you want to stay within or below, but not me. And what I say by that is like if we're gonna go somewhere and maybe let's say I budgeted, let's say $100 for dinner that night, and we go somewhere and like my dinner's gonna cost me like 150, like that extra $50 is not gonna make me upset. But for someone else, that extra $50 can like set them, behind in their budget and in their finances. So being upfront and being realistic about your budget, I think is going to alleviate, because the last thing you want to do is go to like a fancy steakhouse and now your one friend within the group has like sticker price shock and now they're ordering a salad because they can't or don't want to spend the money for like an actual meal. So you don't want to make it awkward, and just be honest, because if you're friends, you're going to respect that and you're going to find a way to compromise.
Like, again, going back to the Crete trip, because it was high season, I wanted to make a lot of reservations ahead of time. And in my group of friends, I'm like the designated restaurant person, and I don't mind doing it. I like researching the restaurants and I like putting that together. But one of my friends joined the trip a little later, and something that he pointed out was that all the restaurants were very reasonable. And I do try to keep it within a certain budget. But if he had said, Rachel, some of these are a little expensive, I would have no problem changing reservations around. So it's always about like just being honest and being upfront, and just by like doing the itinerary ahead of time, people could like check at the different price points and see if it was something that they were more comfortable with. Because something too I've noticed with friends trips, and something that people might run into, how people want to spend their money can differ. So for me, I'm a big foodie. I don't mind spending more of the budget on that, but I could also have a friend who is more into the outdoors and is more willing to spend more money on experiences outside, but the food part of the budget doesn't have to be as big. So it's also all about compromise in addition to the money amount.
I agree. Now, has there been like a weird or petty thing that you had to split while in one of your trips?
Gosh, I've been like really, really lucky with this. Like I've never have like gotten into an argument with anybody, or I've never had to split something that I thought was like really petty or silly. So I've been really, really fortunate. Thank God. I can't say everybody's been so lucky. How about you? I'm thinking back to the $9 smoothie because I feel like there has to be a story with that.
So I actually did a local trip with a group of friends and I got invited by one of my friends, and the other people that were in this trip, I didn't necessarily know them. I've heard about them and heard stories and thought it was going to be like a fun little girls trip. But one of the girls on the trip, she was just like on another level. She did not want to split any of the bills. Like she only paid for like her consumption. So we ended up going to this one place and she was complaining about the prices for drinks. So she wanted us to kind of go out of our way to go somewhere else because she didn't want to spend the money. So then the one of the girls was like, "Listen, I'll just pay for everyone's drink. Like order whatever you guys want. Like I got it." So whatever, she orders the drinks, and then the girl she ends up ordering like the most expensive smoothie on the menu.
She made all that noise about it. She ordered the most expensive
Yeah,
one.
orders the most expensive smoothie on the menu. It was like a drink. And anyways, the one girl who was on the trip with us, she ended up paying for everyone's drink. And like most of the smoothie were like $4 or $5, but this one girl got a double shot of like ginger. I don't even know, whatever it was, but it was pretty expensive. It was like double the price. And like I thought it was petty because I'm like, you're getting this for free after you just spent like the last 15 minutes complaining about the prices of the drinks, and you would think that you would order like something more economical.
Oh my god. See,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be able to even keep my mouth shut at my age. I would be like, "Are you for real right now?"
Yeah. And then the one girl was like, "Oh, so that's what you want? You complain about the prices and you order the most expensive," but she had like offered to treat us all. And I think it was more so because she just not did not want to walk to another location. And she was like done listening to this one girl complain for like 20 minutes about the cost of the smoothie.
God. Yeah, she reminds me of me in the sense that I have no problem paying for convenience. And if I'm like walking around and I'm tired, I will gladly pay an extra whatever to like shut somebody up. I mean, but oh my God, how rude is that? It's like you're complaining about the cost of it and then you're like, I'll take the most expensive one on the menu. Now that someone
Exactly.
else is paying, it's all good. Oh my gosh. I would be like, you are not coming on any more trips.
No. Needless to say, I've never traveled with that group again. I'm still really good friends with my one friend who had invited me on the trip, but then I was like, yeah, no, these girls are something else. First of all, they were a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, they were a lot of fun, but they were also like really big drinkers. So that trip, and that's another thing when it comes to like budget. I remember one of the nights we went out for dinner and we had gotten appetizers, a few bottles of wine, and I maybe had like one or two glasses of wine, or maybe like three at the very, very most. And because we had gotten four or five bottles, like I ended up dishing out over $200 for dinner that night. So, needless to say, the rest of the time that we were going out, I was like, you know what? If I'm going to pay for it, I might as well drink
Might
it.
as well
So,
enjoy it. My
So
goodness.
anytime it was time for a refill, I was like, "Sure, fill me up."
Top it up, top it up. Yeah, especially like dining out, like alcohol is definitely one of those things that can be a common cause of conflict because, like you said, if you have a group of friends and someone doesn't drink quite as much, alcohol can drive up the bill quite a bit. So you don't want to get in a situation where you're splitting the bill equally and they're paying substantially more than what they've consumed. So, what do you think are some other causes of conflict during a friend's trip as far as money goes? For me, I can definitely say like public transportation versus walking versus a cab because there's always that one person who's like, I can walk. And then someone else is like, no, let's pay the $3 to take the metro. And then yet there'll be somebody else who's like, let's just take a cab. Like, I feel like transportation is another one where you can run into these sort of issues for sure.
Definitely. And I think for me, it would have to be more accommodations. So I don't mind spending the money, but like, let's say if we're traveling somewhere where we're not going to spend as much time in the hotel, maybe I don't care if we have, like, let's say, like an ocean view or like a specific kind of like room type. I'd rather spend more money and stay in an accommodation where it's going to be like nicer. We have like bigger rooms versus having like an ocean view. I know one time I traveled with one of my friends. We were in the Caribbean and she really wanted to have an ocean view in our room. However, the room only had one bed. And I'm like, why are we squeezing into this one bed just to have the ocean view where we're barely going to spend any time in the room? Like, I'd rather spend that money and the equal amount of money that we're spending to get the view. We could get a room that's like bigger, even if it's like a garden view versus an ocean view. So I feel like for me, the accommodation, like I want to be comfortable, especially when I'm traveling with a group of friends and there's going to be maybe like two of us staying in a room or maybe sometimes three of us in one room. I'd rather make sure that it's something spacious and I'd rather spend a little bit more money and get more space than necessarily have to get like a view or a high floor or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I know for me, I have the Hyatt credit card, and sometimes if there's availability, they'll like upgrade me to a higher floor or to a better view or something. But at the end of the day, if I'm splitting a room with a bunch of people, that extra space is worth a lot because I will say when we were in Crete, a lot of the rooms that I had booked happened to have an ocean view or a little balcony, but we were like barely in the room. Like, I don't even think we used any of that stuff like one time. So you also have to like consider like how much will I actually be in the room? And if it's mostly to sleep, you would much rather have that extra space. So I'm totally like on board with that. And I do think accommodation is one of the things that can cause problems. But I do know another thing that can cause issues if you're in a big group, this whole idea of what should be a shared cost and what should be a personal cost. So do you have any opinions on that?
I mean, yeah, that's a big one because again, we all like different things. So, like, I know, for instance, my one friend that I went to on the trip with, she loves to sleep in. Versus for me, like, I'm like so hyped up of being in a new destination. Like, I'll sleep, but then I'm like up and I want to go out and adventure. So, like, I remember I had booked like a walking tour that I really, really wanted to do. But for her, that wasn't really like up her alley. So having those conversations like ahead of time, like we spoke about it, and I was like, listen, like I'm most likely gonna wake up early. This is not something that you necessarily want to do anyways. So I'll just do this like on my own. So I didn't expect her one to wake up early or two to dish out the money on something that I particularly wanted to do. But I feel like when it comes to like obviously accommodations, that's a share expense. Transportation is a share expense. Even with food, depending on who you're traveling with. I've traveled with friends like my one friend Michelle. I love traveling with her because we're great when it comes to splitting expenses. Like we both kind of have the same like eating style. We like to get a little bit of everything and like try each other's food. So normally we share a lot of the meals, we'll get like a few appetizers. So like we can share those expenses. Whereas I have other friends that they're more specific and they just kind of want to get their own meal. They don't really want to do like shared of anything. So that would be more like an individual expense. So with something like that, I would be okay with paying whatever I consume versus splitting the bill. If I'm traveling with like one person, if I'm traveling with a group, then I just find it easier to kind of split the bill. But you
Yeah.
have different people, and then obviously like experiences. To me, that's more or less like an individual expense because if you want to do a certain activity that I don't want to do, I don't think that it's fair for me to like drag you out to get it done. So that could be
No.
individual.
No, and it's like you also have to like have these conversations up front, like we said before, because it does avoid drama. Like so with the Crete trip, for example, we had booked an experience, but it was only the max could be 3 people. And then when we had a fourth person joining us, he was very chill. He's like, I'll just like enjoy like the city, I'll walk around, I'll do my own thing. So something like that we all kind of paid for separately because like obviously if someone's not like participating, that's not something you want to put in Splitwise, which is one of the apps that we used on this trip. And I have to say, like, Splitwise made a big difference with cutting down the drama. Like, everybody has to like enter everything, but you can like clearly see what it is you owe and don't owe. And I know for like me, like, numbers are not my thing. I don't do math. I'm an English teacher. It is what it is. But just having that app and clearly seeing like who I owed what was a big difference. So Splitwise is a great way to go, especially if you're traveling with like more than 2 people. 2 people, you can just, I feel like, can kind of figure it out. Whereas once the group gets bigger, Splitwise was a good idea.
I know. I also used Splitwise when I went on my recent trip to Croatia with my friend Michelle. So she was traveling from Portugal. I was traveling from New Jersey. So obviously our expenses were a little bit different when it came to our transportation and our flights. I got there about 4 or 5 days before she did. And then even one of the nights, Michael was still with us. So we had transferred to a different hotel. So like even with that, like I made sure when I calculated the cost of the room that I divided it by 3 of us versus just 2 of us so that it was even and she wasn't like overpaying for the one night while Michael was there just to kind of make it even. But again, I think it comes to also having conversations ahead of time. Like I know when we did that trip, like we booked our flights separately. I personally ended up booking like all of the hotels and all of the activities and just kept track of it on Splitwise. And I told her like, hey, after the trip, once we're done and we figure out who pays for what, we just put it into the app and then we'll see who has to pay who for anything. And we did it that way. I know there are certain people that maybe they want to get paid like right away. So having those conversations ahead of time, like I already knew and I was perfectly fine. I was like, we'll just settle up at the end of the trip once we're both like back home and we can figure this out. It's not a big deal. Like she did pay for like, let's say like the hotel, the one hotel that I ended up paying like for upfront, she paid me even before I got to Croatia. So when it comes to, splitting the bill, knowing ahead of time allows you to kind of have these conversations and plan accordingly because I've also traveled with people that they are penny pinching and like if they allocated $25 for, lunch, they're only paid $25 for lunch.
Yeah,
So like if we're
seriously.
splitting the bill, like I need to like Venmo them or Zelle them like right then and there. And I also kind of know some of my friends who are like that. So like ahead of time, I'll just pay them right away or I'll just like pay myself and tell them to send me the money after the fact.
Yeah, like it's always good to know who you're traveling with. Like with our recent trip to Greece, like with Splitwise, like I kind of settled it up like once we were back. And then sometimes what my friend and I will do, we've traveled together in the past, like when it comes to flights and hotel expenses, like big expenses ahead of time, we'll just like pay for it in advance. And then when it comes to like splitting the bill later for like dinners or experiences, we tend to settle that up later and it works for us. But I'm kind of like you where I'm fine like waiting a little bit. It doesn't have to be like immediately, like when we get home or like immediately on the road, as long as we settle it up at some point. But I know that there can be downsides to that as well, because have you ever had an issue where someone owes you money and they're taking forever to pay back?
I feel awful. Like, even if you lend me like $1, I want to pay you back. Like, this
That's
whole
me.
time, I'm going to be thinking about, like, oh my God, I got to give Rachel her dollar. Like, that's just me personally.
Same.
But I have had friends where they're like, hey, is it okay if I pay you when we get back? And I'm like, yeah, totally fine. So I already knew ahead of time that they were going to pay me like a little bit once we got back home. But I went on one trip and it took my friend to pay me like 3 months later. And the biggest thing is like if you're paying with a credit card, like I personally like to pay my credit cards in full or try to carry if I'm going to carry a balance, like not a large balance. So that's just like me. I just like to pay. I don't want to pay the extra finance charges, but the amount that I had dished out for her was pretty high up. So now, like whatever, let's just say she owed me 500. By the time she paid me back, that 500 turned into like $650 because I paid like interest and all these fees or whatever the case was on the credit card. So it's kind of like a pain in the butt. So it's like if you're telling me you're going to pay me within a certain time, then I'm also going to expect you to pay me within a certain time because I already have like my bills like set up a certain way and how I allocate my funds. So yeah, so that was a little bit of a
Yeah.
pain in the butt.
No, definitely, and I think that's something important to talk about, like, it's one thing if somebody owes you, like, $40 for a dinner. Again, me personally, if I owe someone money, like, it'll bother me until I pay them back, like, I like paying them back almost immediately, but if someone, say, owes me 40 bucks, I'm not gonna be, like, losing sleep over, but if someone owes me, like, 500, 600, some it's just like, "Hey, you wanna be a little bit more mindful of that?" Like, I understand when you go back to work, things could be like crazy or whatever. But that amount, yeah, especially if interest kicks in, like that could be a lot of money because the credit card companies are ruthless with that. Like my one credit card, I think the APR is like 27% or something ridiculous. It's a really good credit card. You get a lot of like perks and lounge access and whatnot, but that interest rate, that's a killer.
I guess it is funny too because like normally, like you said, depending on the amount, I would kind of just like patiently wait. But for this particular trip, and I think it was a little bit more than $500, and I ended up saying something like, "Hey, I know you mentioned you were gonna pay me by such and such date. Like, I just have to pay my credit card, so I'm just trying to figure out my finances because I don't want the interest to hit. So, like, do you by when you're gonna be able to?" They're like, "Oh yeah, I should be able to pay you like next week." And then something happened, and that week came and they weren't able to pay me. I even had prefaces. I have to pay like extra because you didn't pay me on time. Like if the roles were reversed, I probably would have been like, hey, like let me know what the interest is. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to pay you when I told you to. I can just pay for
I
some of
would
the interest.
too.
So
Yeah,
like
because I'd feel so bad if I got like, say with our St. Augustine trip, like, if I hadn't paid you something, got hit with interest, I'd feel terrible. I'd be like, "Oh my god, let me get this money from
yeah.
somewhere."
And like it's different. Like there's been times that I've paid for certain things and my friends have paid me like right away. And like I personally didn't pay my credit card. I kind of let that balance it, but that's on me. Like
Yeah,
I
of
personally
course.
chose not to do that. In this scenario, I was kind of a little peeved because I was like, you told me you would pay me on this day. Those were my expectations, but it is what it is with that. I mean, like I know for myself again, like I know some of my friends and how they are when it comes to like money and finances. So with that particular friend, I did travel with them again, but I just made sure like they were able to pay like ahead of time and I did not dish out a large amount of money before the trip.
No, no, because like you said, it's like knowing your friends ahead of time, like who's reliable with the money and who isn't, because that's one thing where I feel like it could really turn a friendship sour. Like I know if I was putting all the stuff on my credit card and not getting paid back, I would be getting really frustrated and ready to march down the small claims court or something.
Like demanding knocking on their door, like, hello,
Yeah.
play the Rihanna song.
Yeah. So that kind of ties into the emotional side of money too, right? Like, how do we even speak up if someone isn't paying their share? Like, how do you even go about it?
I mean, it's an awkward conversation, and again, I'm gonna be a little contradicting here with myself because I'm always like, speak up, have these conversations. But in full honesty, I don't think I do have these conversations because, like, I don't want to be that person. And again, like I said earlier in the episode, I know some of my friends were financially, I make a little bit more money than they do. So, like, I'll probably feel a little bit bad because I'm like, man, like, why am I going to be harassing them for $50? Like it's not a big deal. Whereas if I'm traveling with my another friend that their financial situation might be a little bit better than mine, then maybe I probably will feel better like having these type of conversations. So it's always tough, but I think again, just like the pre-planning, having these expectations ahead of time, knowing the type of people that you're traveling. And sometimes you think you're friends, right? And when you're in a different country or a new scenario, there's different traits that they kind of show. So like maybe they're not like that back home and they turn into this other person when they're traveling overseas. I know one time I had a very like awkward experience. So being from the US, we're accustomed if you go to a restaurant, if you go to a bar, that you're tipping, or if you're staying in a hotel, you're tipping as well. So like you're kind of used to in the hospitality industry to having to tip. And they were just not about that life. And they were also from the States, but they were not about that whole tipping. Like if we went out to eat, let's say our dinner was $100, they're like, oh yeah, we'll leave $5. And I'm like, that's not even like that's 5%.
My
Like what
God.
do you
Yeah,
mean
that's
right now?
tough. Yeah, that's tough.
So like I felt like I had to kind of like overcompensate because for me, I didn't think that was right. I was like, you should at least be leaving like 18, 20%. Like this was great service. Like why are we doing this? So like I felt like I had to like overcompensate versus when I traveled to Europe. In Europe, it's not really customary to sometimes you'll leave like a few euros here and there. So like my friend was constantly yelling at me because I was over tipping. So I had to like untrain myself to
Yeah.
stop tipping. So I think having like these like upfront conversations and like when your friends and like if it's gonna make you feel better, like I wasn't gonna make a big deal about them only wanting to leave like a $5 tip at lunch. I just like went in my bag and like put the extra money for it because I personally felt bad of leaving that type of tip, especially when we had like really, really good service. So again, if it's something that you really feel the need to speak up because you want to be honest.
You always feel better when you speak up. And yeah, like, and if your friend treats you like garbage afterwards, it says more about them than you.
Exactly. Then cut those friendships.
Cut
But
those
again,
friendships. Cut
you know,
those friendships.
I know I'm pretty like easygoing and I'm very like as much type A I can be when I travel and like the planning process. When I'm kind of going on a trip that someone like invited me or planned for, I'm very relaxed and like easygoing. But there are certain things that kind of like annoys me a little bit. And like the whole, like I said, the whole tipping, that part, it could be a little bit like, I don't know, kind of cringe for me.
Yeah, that would definitely make me feel bad too, especially like if it's in the US and it's great service and I was with someone who just refused to tip. I would be like, I would feel like it would be up on me to cover the difference. And I would question if I want to travel with that friend again because it kind of like shows how they treat other people. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And again, to them, that was just like their norm, their lifestyle. So I was like, "What?" I made a comment about it, and then they like said something, and then I was like, "All right, well, now I know." This is how they think. So then I just like whatever. I'll tip a little bit extra. So even when we would go out to eat, like I would put like a little bit extra as well and be like, hey, the extra is for the tip. So like you don't even have to worry about it. So I kind of knew that going in. And then like I said earlier in the episode, I did have the situation when I went on a girls trip and they were ordering like tons of wine. One of the nights they even got like caviar. So it was like a pretty hefty bill. So I was like, you know what? I'm probably gonna pay for it because again, I didn't want to be that like weird person who's like, yeah, I didn't consume it. I'm just gonna pay my portion of the bill. Which there's nothing wrong with that. If that's how you are, then like, hey, by
More
all
power
means,
to
like
you. More
more
power
power to
to you.
you.
Because like I'm scared to do that. So
Yeah.
if you do that and it's a situation like Rosa was in, say they're ordering caviar and you're like, I'm not paying for this, more power to you because I could definitely be a little more assertive when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So
But
respect.
exactly. Well, the one girl on the trip, she did mention, she's like, hey, I know I had ordered it, so like I'll pay for it. And then one of the others, she's like, oh no, we all had some. And I'm like, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. So again, speaking up for yourself and having these conversations, even if they are awkward, because otherwise, like you're on this trip, especially if it's like the very beginning of the trip, and it doesn't have to be like confrontational. Like now, this is their way of thinking, or this is most likely how they're going to behave the entire trip. So now, like I said, when I went with my friends and I already knew like, hey, they're not big when it comes to tipping or when it comes to certain things, like I was overcompensating for them, but that was my own personal choice and I was fine with it. I wasn't going to be complaining to them the whole time, every meal that we went to.
Yeah, it's just like so crazy. So when it comes to budgeting, like I know you have some friends who make more, some friends who make less. Like, how do you handle a situation? Say somebody wants to go on the trip, but their budget doesn't like match yours. Let's say they have a much smaller budget. Like, how do you go about handling it? I know for me, I'm a big planner, so I would do an itinerary ahead of time. And then if something was too expensive for them, but if I really wanted to do it, I personally have no problem doing things by myself. Like if I wanted to do like some food and wine tour that's like $100 and my friend wasn't into that, but we're like, hey, I can like do my own thing while you're enjoying this wine tour. Like that's my ideal way of addressing it. But I wonder if you had different thoughts on that.
I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, thankfully, I've never been in a situation where like our budgets don't align. There was one time I was traveling with one of my friends and we had set like a budget for the hotel and the place that we were traveling to, it was like a really nice area. We were actually in was I don't know if it was Greece or no, this was when I went to Italy, where we were gonna be staying. Like the accommodations were pricey. So like her budget was a little bit less than the nicer areas that we were getting our bang for our buck for. So then I'm like, hey, listen, like with that budget, like there's just no way we're gonna find something nice and suitable, like where we want it to be. Like, is there any wiggle room? Maybe we can skip out on doing like an extra activity to offset the extra cost of the hotel. So we were able to have that conversation beforehand because the places that were within that particular budget, I didn't care for. And I was like, I mean, I wasn't gonna come out of pocket extra to offset her costs, but I had that conversation up front, like, hey, within this budget, this is where we're getting. Like, if we're able to spend a little bit more, this is what we can get within this higher price budget, which she was fine with. And then we ended up having to skip like one of the activities that we wanted to do, like a boat ride, because then at that point it would have put her over budget for the entire trip. So we were able to have that conversation and be flexible. And I was totally fine. Like the boat ride would have been cool, but I was like, we can still do something else that's kind of similar and save that money. And we're staying at a nicer place, which was worth more to me than doing the boat ride.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, it's all about having those conversations ahead of time and just being like reasonable. Like on our recent trip to Crete, one of our friends did the majority of the driving. And if you've ever driven on Crete, you have to be like a savvy driver, you have to be an aggressive driver. There's mountains, the road conditions are just different than the US. It's not that it's like unsafe or anything, but you have to be paying attention. It's not just like a drive where you can like shut your brain off and go. So he was doing the bulk of the driving. And in order to make it up to him, since we were like having wine and enjoying the alcohol when we were driving, the boat cruise portion, we all decided to pay for his portion just as a separate thank you because we knew like that he wasn't drinking when we were out. We knew he was doing a lot of the driving. So it was just like being fair. And I like to think if you're traveling with people who are reasonable, it's going to work itself out and everything will be like even in some way. So just hope that your friends are rational, fair people. I like to think that the majority of people are. But again, if you're like traveling with someone who's just horrible and stingy and mean or doing things that are not right, like don't travel with that person again.
I agree. And those nice gesture, I feel like it goes a long way. And it doesn't have to be like anything crazy, but it just shows that one, they acknowledge, like you said, like your friend wasn't drinking because they were driving. Just acknowledging that took a lot. You know, they're also on vacation too. They want to be able to enjoy themselves, but they have this responsibility of making sure that they're, sober, that they're able to drive, that they're focused. So just acknowledging that just goes like a long way. So I'm pretty sure your friend really like appreciated that. I know when you and I went to St. Augustine and I did all the driving, like when we were leaving, you were like, hey, I'm going to pay for the gas. You did all the driving. I was like, thank you. That's really sweet of you. It's just like that small little acknowledgement. I feel like it goes a long way and it says a lot about that person's character. And it's going to make you want to travel with them again because, like, one, this person, like you, both match each other's vibe, not just personally, but financially. So I think that's very like generous and just very thoughtful.
It's all about being fair. Like you don't, and you have to think like too, like again with the driving, you also want to consider like the non-money aspects. Like even though you're not paying extra to drive or anything, it's an extra cost because you have to be focused. You have to, have your eyes on the road. And like that's like a cost too, even though there's not a dollar sign on that. So just like being, reasonable and thanking people if they've done a good job. You don't want to be totally selfish. That's not never a good thing.
Never a good thing. So have you ever had a financial conflict on a trip that's affected your like friendship directly?
God, I've been like really, again, I've been guys so lucky with this. Like, I've mostly traveled solo, and more recently, I've done a lot more friend trips. Like, Rose and I, we've been to St. Augustine together. So, I've been really lucky in the sense that I've never had a situation where somebody was like, I felt like taking advantage of me or refusing to pay me back or anything like that that could have really damaged the friendship. I will say if I ever felt like I was swindled out of a lot of money, say if it was a situation where it was hundreds of dollars and I was paying all sorts of interest and they weren't paying me back, that would absolutely negatively impact the friendship because it's like, who does that? Because I know for me, just how I am, I want to make sure somebody's like paid back when they ask for it. Like I don't like owing money. It's one of those things where I don't tolerate it. Now, if I bring up my credit card myself and can't make like the balance in full, that's on me, but I don't want to impact someone else. But I've been pretty lucky with that. Have you ever had a situation where it negatively impacted your friendships because somebody was just being a total tool when it came to finances?
So no, so just that one story that I mentioned at the beginning when I was traveling with my friend and her friends. There were like the one girl who was like constantly like complaining, and then you had the one girl who was just like ordering too much caviar and wine. So then after that, I was like, okay, their vibe is not necessarily my vibe. So then I was like, no, they ended up going like on another trip and she had invited me. I couldn't go just because like the timing didn't work for work, which is perfect because that was my excuse. And I was like, yeah, no, I can't make it. So after that, I was just like with that particular like group of girls, it's just not my vibe and not my thing. And then even with my other friend that I mentioned before, where she wanted to spend more money to have like an ocean view versus like the more space, like I already kind of knew at that point and we had a great time. It wasn't like it was a big issue or anything like that. But the next time that we traveled together, I was like, hey, why don't we do this? Like, let's set a budget. You can find a couple of accommodation options. I'll find a couple of accommodation options. And then we can review the list together and pick a location that we both like. That way I didn't kind of just leave it up to her to find places that were like suitable to her more. And then from there, a couple of different options to choose from. So I navigated that way. So I feel like you also understand someone's travel style and then you can kind of pivot and navigate from there. But thankfully I've never had a situation where like I lost a friendship over it because of money.
Yeah, and that you make a really good point too about like you guys coming together with different accommodation options. Like I know that it's kind of like a joke, especially in social media with friends trips. Like there's always one person who's the planner and then somebody else who's along for the ride, right? So if you're the person who's along for the ride and don't put in any input, I do kind of think at that point you really have no right to complain about anything, whether it's costs or like the room or whatnot. Whereas if you're planning together, you can discuss it, but if you're the type of friend who's very like type B or just like, I'm just along for the ride, you have to contribute next time.
Exactly. Put in the work.
Yeah, put in the work. Put in the work. Cause I know like me and you, we plan our trips like hardcore.
Yeah, everything has to be planned out.
Yeah.
But going back to splitting the money. So again, I know like we said before, I personally have used Splitwise. Are there any like other apps that you use? I know sometimes like I would keep track on like my notes and stuff, but I feel like Splitwise is a great app to keep track of everything and then see who has to pay who for what.
Be honest with you, Rosa, I've only ever really used Splitwise and I did really like it. And something that I liked about Splitwise is since this was a trip to Greece, we could just put everything in euros. So it was like the exact price. And then when I got back, I just kind of like used a calculator to figure what it would be in dollars because I was just Venmoing after the fact. And I'm like, this is fine. And it really did keep my head on straight when it came to knowing who I still owed money and how much. And I also liked it that too, you could adjust how many people to split things up between because my one friend likes to sleep in, but the three of us would sometimes go out for breakfast and he would join later. So it was good to just be able to split some things three ways on Splitwise as opposed to all four ways. Although we would joke about it, we would be like, what if I would have it if we like split this up four ways and he didn't even participate in the meal if he would notice? Not that we would ever do that. That would be a really like mean thing to do. But I guess the only downside with something like Splitwise is just making sure that your friends are the type to pay you back on time because, like, it's really up to you to then settle it once you're back. And if it's a person who likes to take their time with paying people back, it could be problematic.
Yeah. And again, it all goes back to like the pre-planning, knowing that like ahead of time. So when I went to Croatia with my friend Michelle, like I said, I had paid for a bulk of the accommodations and like some of the activities beforehand. She had paid me for some of the stuff, the other stuff. I was like, hey, we'll figure it out like after the trip. But even while we were on our trip, like sometimes we would go out to eat. I put it on my card just because I wanted the miles. But there were times that it was just easier and cheaper to pay cash, so she would pay in euros and then, we would put it into the app and keep track that way. So it was share expense. It wasn't just always like me like footing the bill and having to figure it out later. So having those conversations ahead of time, I think it kind of alleviates some of like the not necessarily arguments, but some of the hiccups that can come along the way when traveling.
Yeah, just open communications helps. And we've never had a situation where one of us had to be almost like the group treasurer. I know that there's some people who do that and it works for them. But I know for me, I'm just like, "Ah, guys, I'm just like crap with money and numbers. You don't want me as the group treasurer." But if that's a dynamic that works for you, maybe you have a friend who's really mathematically minded and can really keep track of all these things. That's another thing you could do is like play into your strengths. I've never done that, but it's also another possibility to keep all of the finances straight.
Yeah. I mean, I know I hate that happened to me recently. Like we went out to eat and some of us were going to pay cash, some of us were going to pay cards, but they were only able to split the card. I think it was like 6 or 7 of us. We went out for brunch and I think they were only able to split the card among like 4 people. It was like a weird number. So trying to like figure out, my one friend just hands me the bill and hands me the credit card and the cash. She was like, "Here you go. You're the accountant." I'm like, "What?
You're the
I have
accountant,
the
you
rest of
do
the
it.
margaritas." I
You're
can't
the
pay.
accountant, you do it.
So like it was so stressful because it like took me forever. And then I realized that of course like the tip was included because it was a big group. So then I had to like uncalculate everything. And I was like, I don't know how I got stuck with this job, but like I don't want it.
It's also yeah, it's also hard like that when it's like a big group of people, just like and even just when you're at home figuring out like a big bill and there's like a huge group of people, like sometimes I'm just kind of like, just put it all on my card and Venmo
Yeah.
me.
And we were all splitting it like evenly. So it wasn't like I had to like calculate like who paid for like what, but just like figuring out, okay, there's 4 cards, there's this amount of cash, who has to pay who because it was only like X amount of cards. At one point I was like, can just like I can just put it all on my card. But like my friends were like, no, we want to pay like on I was like, oh my gosh. It was stressful. I felt like I had like a ticking time bomb on my hand.
Yeah, that's so stressful because, like you said, like sometimes in those situations, I know my book club friends and I will go out to eat in Jersey, and there could be like 6 or 7 of us. Sometimes I'll just be like, look, just put it on my card. And then when we're right there at the table, people just Venmo me. But then, like, if someone's like, no, I want to put some on my card, then that's when it gets like messy. And keeping track of all those numbers, I can't do it, especially if I've had a couple glasses of wine.
At least my excuse is that I had too much tequila.
I cannot do math even when I am stone cold sober. So if you're expecting me to figure out math at the end of a meal like that,
It's not gonna
you
happen.
may lose some money. I don't know. Like don't trust me with that. Don't
Oh
trust me
my
with that.
god. So there's one thing that we can both agree on. I mean, it can be a little awkward talking about money, talking about finances, but having these conversations ahead of time is going to make it so much easier when the trip makes it out of the group chat. So be upfront about it. And also too for yourself, don't feel the need that now you have to kind of spend a little bit more money or put yourself in a financial strain just to kind of keep up with everyone else on the group. So have these conversations and be realistic, set these expectations ahead of time for yourself and for your friends to make it less stressful for everyone on the trip. But if you have like one piece of advice that you would recommend to someone planning a trip with friends, what would that be?
Definitely have the conversation ahead of time. Like, I know I sound repetitive here, but I do think setting those expectations up front and being involved in the planning process, picking the accommodation together, looking at the restaurants together, having like an idea of a budget beforehand. Because trust me, we just did our travel fails episode. When you are in a different country and you're overwhelmed and you're overstimulated and there's so much other stuff going on, it could make something that could be solved with a simple conversation at home 50 times worse in an unfamiliar setting when you're already stressed out. Like, there's been times I've turned into a monster overseas over things that would not turn me into a monster back home. So, it's really important to have those conversations up front and then just making sure you are keeping track of things. Like, again, I don't do numbers, it's not my thing, but it's so important that you at least have an idea of what you owe. That's where an app like Splitwise can really come in handy. Just having that up front and making sure that you're entering stuff, because that's, I would say, another downside with Splitwise is sometimes I know like friends of mine will save the receipts and then try to go back in after the fact. Just enter it as you get it's better. So being upfront beforehand and then being diligent with splitting things up, whether it's an app or with notes, just so everyone kind of knows what's going on. Because when you don't have those conversations and you're getting into a massive fight in a cafe in Paris somewhere, that is not a travel memory you want to have. So that would be my advice. How about you, Rosa? Any advice for anyone planning on taking a French trip and dealing with money?
Yeah, I think, like I said before, don't feel pressured to spend more money than what you have. I know sometimes we're traveling with friends, you kind of want to keep up, but like you said, planning ahead and having an input into certain things will kind of help avoid that to a certain extent because at least like now, like, okay, if we're going out to eat, you both pick the restaurant. So most likely you're going to see prices or have an idea of how much you're going to spend. So you should already kind of know ahead of time, but don't feel pressure to spending more money than what you have. Because I think one, you're gonna then be counting every single dollar that you're spending during that trip because you're gonna be a little bit more conscious, especially let's say you only brought X amount like in cash and don't have a credit card or anything else to rely on. You don't want to put yourself into that situation. So just be upfront with yourself and be upfront with your friends. So that way you kind of know. And then that way other people don't feel like they're paying for your $9 smoothie after you just complained about it for like 30 minutes and never get paid back for it.
Yeah, yeah, don't do that. Jerk with money and someone offers to treat you. Don't pick the most expensive thing on the menu. That's another good piece of advice I like to offer. Don't be a jerk. Pretty
And
simple thing to do.
exactly. Don't be a jerk. Don't shame your friends either into being like, I know I've gone out, like, I went to this one day trip and we're going somewhere. And like, one of the girls was like, oh, but it's only like 20 bucks. But like, yeah, it's only 20 bucks, but you don't know financially for that person if that $20 is going to set them over their budget or not. Or maybe they didn't bring cash because they didn't anticipate like having to pay for anything. So like don't be a jerk about things and don't like make someone feel left out in an activity because the finances or feel the need to pressure them to do something or make kind of like snarky remarks like that because like we're all on different wavelengths when it comes to our finances. And even if you have the money, maybe you just don't want to spend it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So don't be a jerk, I think is our big takeaway with this.
exactly. Plan ahead. Don't be a jerk.
Plan ahead, don't be a jerk. Get that on a t-shirt. Plan ahead, don't be a jerk.
I love the
So
slogan.
I love it. I love it. So to wrap this up, would you rather travel money edition? We love our rapid fire questions.
Let's do
So
it.
Rosa, would you rather split everything 50-50, even if you didn't eat or do the thing in question, or track every single receipt and transaction?
I mean, speaking from experience, I guess I'd rather track every single receipt and transaction. I don't want to be spending $60 on caviar that I didn't even eat.
Yeah, I have to say the same thing. And it's like, I'm not going to be like that jerk if we each order, like, say you order a $25 meal and I order a $20 meal. Like, we're all adults here. I'm not going to be that much of a jerk. Yeah, if I had to go with one, it would definitely be track every single receipt because I don't want to pay for like champagne if I didn't have any if I was driving. I'm not doing that. Sorry. No, not happening.
Don't be a jerk. All right. Now, would you rather be the friend who always pays first and waits to get paid back, or be the one everyone's always waiting on to Venmo?
God. So this is where do not take advantage of me, people. I'll be angry. But because I know myself, I'd rather be the friend who always pays first because at least then I know in my heart and my conscience I did the right thing. And if they all want to be a-holes about it, that's on them. It's not on me. But it is like painful being the better person. I wish I could be that person that everyone's always waiting on Venmo because yeah, but I can't do it. I would have to go with the first one. How about you?
I second that as well. I want to get my miles. So, like, I'll pay for it. As long as I don't have to pay anything extra on finances or interest, it'll be worth my while.
Right. Would you rather lose $20 and avoid a money conversation or ask for it and risk being that friend in air quotes?
Oof, that's a tough one because I have been that friend, but it was not $20. I think I'll probably lose the $20 and avoid a money combo. It depends though. Hold on. I take that back because if it was you, I'd be like, Rachel, you owe me $20.
If it was like people I didn't know well, I would be like, is it only $20? I'll just deal with it. But yeah, if it was like you or someone I was close to, I'd be like, where's my $20?
Hint, hint. I need to spend money on books. Like, can you please send me my money?
Yeah, Rosa and I, we want to do like a road trip around New Jersey and go to all these independent bookstores. And $20, that's a book. I mean,
Yeah.
that is a nice book. So I totally get it. All right. Would you rather travel with friends who overspend wildly or travel with friends who pinch pennies on everything?
Ooh, that's a tough one. But like, I don't like when someone it's like super tight when it comes to money, not to sound like a jerk or an a-hole, but like if it's raining outside and we have to walk for like 30 minutes, like, and a cab ride is $10, like we're getting on the cab. Like, even if I'm paying for it on my own, we're getting on the cab. I don't want to travel with someone who's like, oh no, I'm not gonna spend $5 because like whatever. But then again, I'm like, if you're walking into Chanel and you're buying a handbag, like I'm gonna
It's
probably get tempted to wanna
Chanel.
buy a Chanel handbag.
Yeah, I have to go with the overspenders too. Like, I'm sorry. I could declare bankruptcy if I wanted to. It doesn't matter. So I'm going
Exactly.
with the overspenders. Declaring bankruptcy, I mean, I think it's like what? Your credit score takes a dip for like 2 years.
I think it's more than that, but okay. Do your research, kids.
I love how like my family works in bankruptcy, and I'm like, how long does that last on your credit score? I don't know.
More than 2 years, so don't do it. Don't do it, but it'll be worth it. All right. So, after listening to you answer that question, would you rather have one person in charge of all the money or rotate the responsibility daily?
I don't know if I wanna be in charge of the money ever, so if there was someone who is more math-minded than me, they can absolutely do it. Although I will say I was really good with Splitwise about entering things immediately. As soon as I got the receipt, I would put it in, so maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit. I guess I take that back. Rotating the responsibility daily worked well with Splitwise, making sure everyone was entering their thing. I don't think anybody, like, missed out on anything they bought, and it worked out pretty well. So that's totally fine. I would start feeling bad if one person had to be like my mother on the trip. It would be we're all adults. We can take responsibility.
Exactly. We can all handle the finances. I guess for me, it really depends. Like, if it's a larger trip, then I think it probably would be easier to rotate the responsibility daily. So that way, if it's a large amount of money, we can all kind of see the hit to our bank accounts as opposed to like one person like dishing out all the cash. So I think it's probably easier to rotate the responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so drama lovers, you'll love this one. So, would you
Ooh.
rather go on a luxurious trip with a flaky friend who might bail, or go on a budget trip with a super reliable friend you don't vibe with? I know what my answer is because I can declare bankruptcy. But go ahead, Rosa.
Yeah, if I think I said this on another episode, I think the high maintenance, like I want to travel with someone who's fun. Like for that, I'd rather travel by myself. So like I'll go on the luxurious trip all alone and my flaky friend can stay behind.
Totally, totally. Like going on a trip with someone who I don't vibe with sounds like hell to me. Like I cannot imagine being in Japan 13 hours away, being with a total jerk the whole time. I would just be like ready to shove him off a temple because it's like I can't do it. I'm sorry. I'd rather take the financial loss and travel by myself.
I agree. I feel like this wraps up another fun episode. Once again, whenever we do these solo episodes, bear with us guys because we go a little bit unhinged.
We do, we do. But you guys love us for that. And one of these days we will set up a Patreon and you could get the special episodes where we just spill all the gossip about our trips and the real stories behind traveling. But yeah,
Until then, listen to the PG version and make sure to leave us a 5-star rating.
give us a 5-star rating because, guys, it really does help if you leave those ratings. It's really awesome. And we also love hearing back from you all and your thoughts. And as always, you can find us on social media at Bon Voyage Besties. If you have any ideas for an episode topic, feel free to DM us. If you ever want to speak on the show, feel free to email us. We have a form you can fill out. And yeah, we love you guys and we thank you for being so involved in the show.
Definitely. Group trips, they should be all about making memories, not just collecting receipts like emotional baggage. If you got a hilarious or even a horrifying bill splitting stories, like Rachel said, DM us. We would love to share this on a future episode because I feel like a lot of our episodes are just like stepping stones because we have so many different tips and advice to share with you all. So make sure to follow us, leave us a review, and as always, travel safely and bon voyage, besties.
Travel safely, have fun, and don't declare bankruptcy because I do think it's more than 2 years. So don't listen to me and watch your money.
And do not order a $9 smoothie.
No. And don't order caviar if someone's not going to eat it. So that would be
On
our
that
advice.
note, we love you. And as always, goodbye.
Oh my gosh.